anytime anyone's making some new music is really, really exciting for me. And just like you said, I love being asked. If you're listening to this and you want Ryan and I to play drums for you, we'll do it, right?
Chris will. Don't ask me. Hello. Just kidding there, folks. Just having a little laugh. That was in reference, you'll hear it in the episode, but we were talking about we both have the tendency to kind of take on a lot of things. So we got a treat for you today. We had a great chat with a real lovely gent, Mr. Chris Murdoch. I'm going to go ahead and say this is the first classic episode of the new season. Chris is a drummer out of Halifax, Nova Scotia. He's played in all kinds of bands. In the punk and hardcore scene, he was in Envision. He played with a band called Get Tested. He was in Outtacontroller for a bit. He was, I think, the original drummer for Botfly, which I was really surprised to learn. We're going to hear about that. And just an all-around sweet dude. We had a great chat. I'm getting more used to doing the Zoom thing. So this one was recorded long distance. We'd actually talked about doing this last year, but I, at the time, hadn't figured out how to do distance interviews and then kind of ran out of steam on season 2. So here we are. So if you hear any birds chirping in the background, that's because they say you should get some kind of background noise for the Zoom audio, and that's what I was able to find. I hit him up, especially like kind of really tragically topical right now. He has put out a pamphlet in conjunction with Pentagon Black, who some of you may know. They've put out a couple of compilations of Canadian indie bands in the last few years. So it's a pamphlet called Black Dot and Afropunk Primer. The title, of course, is a Bad Brains reference, and it talks about black punk pioneers and his own experiences with racism as a black musician in the punk scene. And I think just living in Nova Scotia, all of the sales of the pamphlet in the month of June are going to the Black Lives Matter Solidarity Fund, Nova Scotia. It's only $2. You should go get one right now. Pentagon.black on the internet, or I'll link to it in the show notes on my site, learndrums.ca. We talked a little bit about that project. We didn't get too heavy with it. We just kind of talked about the history of how it came about. Both because this is a music show primarily, and that's what I wanted to talk about. Talk about the good things. But also, I don't want to make somebody talk about something that's painful for them on my show, even if it's for my education. I don't want to push people in ways that make them uncomfortable. And listening back to this episode, I think that he was probably more comfortable talking about that stuff than I was. So to that end, just to let you know, my brother and James and I have committed to, we're going to do a book club similar to the Neil Young one that Jason Ogden and I did, but we're doing it with White Fragility. So that's going to be here on this podcast in a couple of weeks. And that has nothing to do with this interview. We decided that before I booked this one. Anyhow, learndrums.ca, show notes, Learn Drums on Instagram. Enjoy. We are recording.
It's official. It's all documented now.
Right. I've got to, I just think I shouldn't have said anything. You do that. Does it show on your screen?
The recording thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, in the top left-hand corner of the screen, I can see that it says recording with the red dot there.
Okay, right. It's like the Mark Maron trick is to start recording and not tell people.
Oh, right. Yeah. Oh, very slick. Very slick. That's the way. I like it.
Yeah, it's how he gets I don't know. I think it's about getting a candid thing, but it also is about I think for your own purposes, I'm not on my guard so much if I'm not once you hit the record button, it's official, whatever. Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. No, I think you make a really good point because it's very akin to recording music, right? Like it's like,
Yeah.
and I'm sure I mean, maybe you haven't, but I'm willing to bet you've had the experience as well too, where especially as a drummer, where it's like you play, you rehearse these same songs with this band so many times, and you're nailing it, and it feels so good, and then you get in the studio, and the conditions are exactly the same, and there's no reason why you should be screwing up. But just because it's being recorded, of course you screwed up a million times, right?
Yeah.
Like,
well, the pressure's on. And the thing with the drums too is like you could be 3/4 of the way through the song and then you like hit the rim or something.
yes. It's so annoying, right? Or it's like it's some fill that you've written, right? And it's like, and it could be something even super basic just to give the song some flavor. And then like, yeah, it's like the last 30 seconds of the song and you do the fill and you just completely fuck it up. And it's like, why did that have to happen? Or like you play the song and it feels great. And then you go back and listen to it and it's like, oh, I played this way too fast,
Oh.
Or it's too slow.
We ended up with my old band anyway. We ended up doing a lot of click stuff, and the thing that I would find is like I'd be playing with it, and I'm not somebody who plays right on the click.
Me neither.
And I don't feel like that's necessary. I don't really like that. But then when you listen back to it, like my thing against the click, you're like, how long have I been doing this, and how is it that I still can't do it? It's like I'm playing around the click, but not attached to it. And I think it's like the thing with the grid and digital recording too, where because you've got this like really gridded out thing, you're like, well, obviously what I did is wrong because the straight lines are correct. I don't know. Maybe it's just self-judgment.
No, I think it's like it really it can really screw with your head, you know what I mean? Like I remember being really, when I was like 12 or 13 and just starting drum lessons, I remember I got this new drum teacher, this guy Glenn, who was great, and he had it wasn't a click track, but he had a CD that was just like these bass riffs. Like it was just like a 16-track CD or something, and every song, quote unquote, was just like this dude just playing like maybe a funky riff or kind of a slower riff or whatever, with the whole purpose of, an aspiring drummer to play along and get a feel for the rhythm and stuff like that. And I feel like my timing in general has always been good, but it's like I remember like being so scared because it was fun, and I liked the riffs and I would play along, and then of course it's so loud that you can barely hear really what's happening. So then you pause and you listen to the song and it's like, oh, I'm way ahead or I'm way underneath the beat. And like this is before I had ever actually played with anyone, like for real. Like I was just a little kid. So I remember being so scared, like, shit, if I can't keep up with this CD, like, or if I'm playing too fast for the CD, what's this going to be like when I have actual human beings? Like I'm going to be terrible. And then of course you actually just bite the bullet and do it, and you realize like it's fine. Like everyone has a natural rhythm and you feed off each other and go through the motions. But it's a scary thought,
Totally. Well, and like other people will adjust to what you're doing, but the CD won't.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And I feel like when I started playing the drums, that was a good lesson to have. Like I'm glad he brought out the CD and stuff, because it was important to realize like playing the drums is not about being robotic. Because I still encounter people today who still feel like, oh, well, a good drummer just means like you're on it. You know what I mean? Like you have that precision, and like, yeah, precision is part of it. But if you don't have like flavor to your drumming and like natural movement, if that makes any sense, like, I don't know, like a natural flow of what you do that the other people in your band will have to follow to give your band those dynamics, then I would say then maybe you're not a good drummer. You know what I mean? Like if you just sound like a machine, that's not so great.
Well, what's the point? Yeah.
What's the point? Yeah. It's not fun.
Yeah. All right. So on that note, Chris Murdoch, how'd you start playing drums? We already like kind of skipped that step, but
yeah, we got right into it,
Yeah.
We did the naturalistic Mark Maron thing.
That's right.
Thanks for asking. Let me see. So I've always been a big rock music fan, like from a very, very early age. So like probably when I was around 7 or 8, I started watching much music like pretty religiously, and pretty much how I really got started was, as funny as it sounds, there was a school play and like a Christmas concert play, and I was the little drummer boy. So I had like this piece of crap, like fake plastic drum. But more importantly, I had 2 actual drumsticks, and that was exciting for me. So I would like beat the hell out of this drum that wasn't really a drum, and I'm sure I broke it and whatever. But the drumsticks were cool because I could listen to like my CDs and stuff, and like I would use the drumsticks like as a guitar, you know what I mean? Like I would put them in such a way that I would pretend that I was playing guitar
sure, like do
on
the
the
air
sticks.
guitar thing with the
Yeah, like
drumstick.
totally
Yeah.
just air guitaring, or they would be a microphone, or they would be drums or whatever, just total foolishness. But more importantly, I would drum along on my legs to music videos like a lot, and my parents noticed it, so they kind of punked me a little bit on this one, because like in like third grade or something, it was just before my birthday. They took me aside and they were like, listen, obviously you like music, so maybe it's time you start doing some music lessons. We're just wondering like what instrument you want to play. And I was a little surprised because they had seen like how much I was drumming. So I was like, the drums, oh my God, the drums. I'm so excited. I want to be a drummer so badly, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, okay, got it. No problem. And then sure enough, on my birthday, they bought me a Yamaha keyboard and enrolled me in piano lessons.
No. Why?
It's like, what the hell? I was
Is
so
it
bummed.
because like every kid's you're supposed to do piano lessons first, or you're supposed to play piano or whatever?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's like, I definitely don't want to give the wrong impression of my parents, because they've always been like so supportive of my music, and like band practices when I was a teenager were always at my house, of course, right, as the drummer. I'm sure you can probably relate to that, right? So they put up with a lot, and I appreciate it. But they also were like, I think they really they didn't dive into me playing in rock bands right away, because I think they were afraid that it was like a passing thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I have lots of examples of that. But yeah, this would be the first one. Like they knew I was interested in drumming, but they didn't want to bite the bullet on a drum kit, because I think that their thought process was, well, maybe this is just something he's going to be into for like a year, and then we've wasted this money, right? So they got like a cheap keyboard and enrolled me in piano. And I took those piano lessons for years. Like I was in them probably until the 7th grade or something, right?
Really?
So yeah, and I think part of it too was like I think my mom maybe as a kid took them, or her mom, or something like that, like someone in the family, and they're like, oh, and neither of my parents are very musical either. So I think they were like, I don't know, maybe in their minds, drums was not as legit as an instrument as piano or guitar or something. I don't know.
There is a thing too where it's like, you know, it's cute if your kid can play a song on the piano for people. I'm not saying that this is their rationale, but if it were me, versus like you play a song on the drums, no one can tell what it is.
Yeah, no, I think you totally nailed it. And yeah, you know, my parents certainly put me in that horrible, awkward position of like, hey, our friends are here for like this dinner party or whatever. Why don't you sit down at the piano and, you know, play Largo or whatever, and you just
Largo?
do it. I think that was the name of it. Just some old classical piano song. I might be getting the name wrong. I think that's the one I remember I actually liked. Mm-hmm. When I first started lessons, we had to learn like I had this teacher, this guy Michael Cornish, who was like not a bad teacher, but he was just like this totally humorless guy. And I remember the first piece of music he gave me to learn was the Inspector Gadget theme. And I was excited as an Inspector Gadget fan, but it was hard. I couldn't get it.
Yeah, I was gonna say like for your first song.
Yeah, totally.
And it's like a mode or something too. It's like not even like a straight.
Right. Exactly.
Like major scale or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's exactly it. And like I had only been in drum lessons for like less than a year at this point, so I had just learned how to play like Mary Had a Little Lamb or something on the piano, and now this guy's like, here, like, and he literally just handed me the sheet music, and he's like, oh, here, this might be interesting for you to learn this, and like have it done by next week. And then of course next week comes, and I'm like, I can't play this shit.
I don't know what this is, dude. Or even like, yeah, that's frustrating, man. I didn't take piano lessons as a kid, and I was so happy that I didn't have to. My cousin said to. Mm-hmm. Later on in life, I wished that I did, and I pick away at it now. And I can play, but like my fingers are clumsy. Like I don't, I hit wrong notes a lot.
No, I totally. I think like I got to a point where I was like a half decent piano player. Although if you sat me down in front of a piano now, I'm absolutely useless, right? But I used to be able to read sheet music, and my fingers were. I had the same problem too. Like my fingers were clumsy, and also maybe this is a cheap excuse, but my hands and fingers are pretty big, right? So it's like I'm a clumsy guy in general, and just had clumsy hands for sure, and would make kind of silly mistakes. But yeah, it's like I didn't really, I really enjoyed taking piano lessons. But finally. After I took them for a number of years, in the 6th grade, they finally relented and bought me a drum kit. So that was like, the best day of my life. Not really, but one of the best days of my life. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And after you showed that you were dedicated to doing music, at least.
Yeah, and it's like it's another example of my parents like wanting to fulfill that need or that desire, but not really committing. So what I mean by that is like. I think my dad purposely sought out like the cheapest drum kit he could get, which is totally, of course, that's understandable. But he took it one step further. He had a friend who had this kit in their attic that had been there like for decades, right? And I think he sold it to my dad real cheap, like maybe $200 something. Because again, my dad's like, happy to get you this drum kit, but I'm not going to spend a lot of money on something that, you know, he certainly didn't think that at age 33 I'd still be doing this. But it was cool, right? Because like, so the kit sounded terrible, but it was cool because I had like this like vintage kit, I suppose. It was made by this company called Coronet.
Yes.
And you familiar with them?
My first drumsticks were Coronet, and
oh, really?
I remember I got for Christmas one year like a practice pad. It was like one of those ones that like looks like a flattened top hat, you know, the one that goes in the snare drum.
Absolutely.
And these like Coronet, and I think they were like 9As the sticks. I don't know if I've ever seen 9As before or after. I don't know where they got them. But I do remember that one broke, and I was like, "Oh my God, those are my drumsticks!" Like, where would I ever get another pair? But
totally,
my only experience with them, really.
It was, and my only experience is this kit, and I'm sure they made quality products, like back in the late '60s or whatever. Maybe they still exist for all I know. I don't know. Someone can correct me, but I think they're out of business now. But it was like this creamy white kit. Once again, that sounded terrible. Like no matter how much I tried to tune it, just because it was so old. But you know, I also didn't care. You know, I had a drum kit, and I started playing in bands immediately, and you know, it didn't matter. And it's funny, actually, looking back on it now, the only piece of the kit that I've retained is an old floor tom that sounds like complete shit, but I'll always hold on to it just because it's kind of a relic, not only, you know, of both my life and just of like this old cool piece of drum equipment. But very, very quickly after I started drumming, I got into punk rock like really, really hard. So in a way, it's unfortunate, right? Because I had this weird kit with like this oversized, really weird ride cymbal made by this company called Krut, Krut.
I've never heard of Krut.
I think they only existed for a couple of years. The cymbal is awful. It's really, really bad. And I remember my drum teacher at the time was like, oh yeah, they made, you know, drum products for a few years and then changed their name because they were like Finnish or something, I don't know, but they didn't realize that Krut in their language is very similar to like crap or crud in English. But anyway, I had this like, you know, this antiquated cymbal and all this stuff. But anyway, I had this cool kick drum that was really, I don't know if I'm going to be able to describe it well, but it's like, you know, a traditional kick drum head is like covers the drum mostly, and then there's like that little hole at the bottom right hand corner that you can mic it or whatever. This was way different. Most of it was open, like it was just a big open hole, but it had this little skin that went around on the inside. Hopefully I'm describing that right. But anyway, it was weird and it was cool, and I wish I still had it, but because I was like a 13-year-old punk kid, I plastered that thing in stickers, right? Which is like, you know, of course, and I'm happy I did it, and there's nothing wrong with stickers or anything, but it's just like, I kind of wish I didn't do that because I had like this real cool, you know what I mean? Like this artifact that I was just like, well, I'm going to put this Independent Trucks sticker on this thing and this gob sticker because that's what I'm into. Like, all right.
That's amazing though.
Yeah, it was, you know, there were parts of it that were cool. Like even once again, even though it didn't sound very good, it had like the kick drum, the kick pedal's head was wooden. So it's like this big wooden ball, like it just looked bizarre. And I also remember too, like people weren't cruel about it or anything, but like definitely it would get some sideways looks. Like
it was not cool.
It was definitely not cool. No way it was not cool. And like I said, it sounded like shit too. So I was very self-conscious. I was like, I went to Summer Rock, which was this thing in Halifax for a while. Yeah. And when I was like 12 years old or something, like I was just started drumming, and then I did that, which was great. You know, I went several times after, and I loved it. And for anyone, you know, listening who doesn't know, is basically like this thing that Long and McQuaid, I guess they are now, the Long and McQuaid put on in conjunction with the Canadian Conservatory of Music as like a summer camp for kids who wanted to play in bands.
I've taught at it in the last, well, not the last couple of years because we've been here, but because the Canadian Conservatory was, I don't know what the connection was between them and Music Stop, but that was like their lesson center branch. And then Long and McQuaid now bought the company and they run the whole thing. But yeah, like 2-week rock camp. There's like a junior and a senior one for like junior high and high school kids.
Yeah. I think the junior one was like ages 9 to 15 or something. And then the other one was 15 to 18. And they would just, you know, you would have traditional quote unquote lessons just to get better at your own instrument with other people who play the same instrument. But then also you would be selected to play in this makeshift band with other people who ostensibly had the same musical interests as you. And then of course it all culminates with this big concert where like your parents and your aunts and uncles all come to watch you play a Green Day song.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, do you remember what you played?
I played a lot of them. I went to that camp like a lot of times, like maybe 5 or 6 times consecutively. But the first one I do remember, there were so many drummers that our band had to have 2. So it was me and this other guy, and I was 12, and he was really young. He was like a 9-year-old kid or something. So it was 2 of us, and the band had like 4 guitar players and 2 basses or something. And we played a Hendrix song. I think we played Fire. And then we also played the Immigrant Song by Led Zeppelin. So you can imagine two actual children trying to play that beat.
I know that I can't. I mean, I could play it for probably 30 seconds. But
I could never play it well. Like now I can at least play it to some degree, but back then I couldn't play it at all. But like do your best.
Yeah,
it's pretty funny.
The whole band, I would think, though. I think it's even tough on the guitar, right? Like the and who was singing it?
Oh my God. I think just like one of the good, like, I think they just randomly selected one of the guitar players, like you singing, and the poor kid just has to be like, okay.
Right.
Oh my God. It's pretty hysterical. But I met so many cool people through going to that camp. So it definitely opened up a lot of doors for me.
So we're bouncing around chronologically. When did you start playing in bands?
Let me see here. So pretty much once So I got my drum set at the end of elementary school, start junior high. I started playing the drums, probably just played by myself for a year. And then basically everything started for me in the 8th grade. When I started 8th grade, I had a whole new set of friends. My other friends had moved away. So I had a whole new set of friends who were like the closest thing to punk rockers in that school.
Just to interrupt for a second.
Yeah.
You grew up in Halifax?
Oh, sorry. In Dartmouth.
Okay.
Yeah. So I started hanging out with a whole new crew of people, started developing much more of a taste in punk specifically, and started playing in bands for real. So it's like there's a whole lot of like unmentionable bands that I was in that didn't we practiced in my basement, but we didn't play a show, we didn't record anything or whatever. So that happened for a few years.
Who would you have been listening to at that time?
Oh man, definitely some embarrassing stuff. I'm happy to talk about it though. Oh no, I'm happy to talk about it. So it's so from a little kid right until the time I was 12, it was all about like anything that could be classified as alternative rock, like the same story that everyone has: Nirvana, Rage Against the Machine, whatever. And then for me, for better or for worse, in my case specifically, always a big fan of Canadian alt rock, especially. So like loved like the Watchmen and Big Wreck and the New Meanies and things that I would see on Much Music. You know what I mean?
Sure.
I was never a Moist or a Tea Party fan, so I have that going for me. But pretty much any.
I like some Moist. Tea Party I could not get into.
I don't know many people who like that band. I do know a couple fans though, but
I do too.
most bands like of that ilk I loved as a kid, right? Because it was the hard, I was looking for like hard hitting rock music, you know what I mean? Like I really was never into, and I'm not putting any music down, everyone should listen to everything, but I was never that blown away by like I was never a big Led Zeppelin fan. I was never like classic rock, like AC/DC and stuff. I don't hate it, but it never spoke to me. But these bands did, because it was like, I'd like watch the Much Music Countdown, you know what I mean? And it's like, oh, this new band, Big Wreck, I've never heard of them. Oh, that guitar part's cool. And the drummer hits really hard and he did a cool fill, like that's all it would take to excite me. But anyway, that's what it was all about for me for years. And then in the 6th grade, I had an awful new metal phase, like I'm sure a lot of people we know did. So grade 6 and 7 were all about, like Korn and the Deftones and stuff. And then grade 8, total 180, Gob, Blink-182, NoFX, MXPX, like the usual skate punk suspects.
The usual suspects. Yeah, I love that.
And then when I hit grade 9, so much changes in a year when you're a kid, right? So when I hit grade 9, I made this big spiritual decision that it was like, oh, I'm into real punk now, you know what I mean? So I was like, started listening to, I don't know, like DOA and the Subhumans and the Misfits and Circle Jerks and Black Flag and like a lot of early 80s American stuff. Or I suppose late 70s, whatever. But still, I really hadn't cut my teeth on hardcore yet. Like I still hadn't heard much Minor Threat or anything. It was all like punk, like decline of Western civilization type of like LA punk. That's what I was really into. And, I started wearing a leather jacket and all that stuff. And then when I hit high school, then I started listening to hardcore, like proper hardcore, I guess you'd say. And that's, that's carried on ever since. But yeah, it definitely started with like Gob and and Less Than Jake and stuff that.
Yep. I had a Less Than Jake t-shirt.
Oh yeah, hell yeah.
The like ringer shirt where the kid's got like a Pez dispenser gun on the
100% amazing.
So what would you say it was like more of like kind of deepening your interest following a thread, or was it more like this stuff isn't doing it for me, I need something harder?
I'm not sure why I came to that conclusion. You know what I mean? I think, I definitely will admit that I'm someone who like, and this is not a good thing, but like, I'm much better now than I was when I was a teenager, but I always have a tendency to be like, oh, this thing is like too popular, so I don't want to be into it, which is so childish and so silly. I think like people should just like whatever they like. And like I say, as an adult, I'm much better now. Like you like something because it's good and that's all that matters. But definitely as like a 14, 15-year-old punk kid with a big chip on my shoulder, if anything was seemed to me to be too accessible or too popular, I didn't want to have anything to do with it, because I always wanted to be subversive and confrontational, and that's what I liked about punk and stuff like that, right? So even though I certainly never lost my love for Gob and Blink-182, and like I still like those bands to this day, I like those records, no problem, but when I was a kid, it was just like, oh, I don't want to associate myself, because like this is right around the year 2000, 2001. So like a lot of, I'm not sure I do know what happened. Enema of the State came out in 99, right? And then, or 2000, somewhere along there. And then when that record came out, I definitely remember seeing this big shift in media and popular culture where like skate punk or, mall punk or whatever became much more accessible. So like movie trailers would have it. And, people would like awful people who you would go to school with all of a sudden like Blink-182, right? And it's like you just feel like as a kid who is like blasting through puberty, you feel like all this stuff is being taken away from you and you get angry about it. So I think that definitely fueled part of my desire. Another big part of it though was that that summer rock camp that year when I went to it, between grade 8 and grade 9. I was, I was very clearly into punk rock. So they put me in a band with the other kids who were going there who were punk rockers, right? And those guys were into, Black Flag and Blitz and like sort of more authentic stuff. And they were in this local band called Invasion of Privacy. And some of them went on to, if any Halifax music nerds end up listening to this, some of them went on to play in Plague Dogs and Robert Goulet and the Graboids. So a lot of those guys are still playing in bands and stuff. But it was basically through meeting them and becoming friends with them where I was like, oh shit, I should start listening to the Sex Pistols and the Subhumans and all this stuff. Like I got to put this mall punk stuff behind me. I'm so, I'm past that now. So I think it was not that they were pressuring me, like they were super accepting, but like, it was, they were very clear about what they were into. And of course I wanted to be like them, right? They were a couple years older than me and I thought they were super cool. So yeah, that was the summer I was like, oh, I'm a real punk now.
I'm a real punk. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I graduated in 2000, so that Enema of the State was like my grade 12 year.
Okay.
And that was the last Blink record that I was able to listen to. Like I bought Take Off Your Pants and Jacket, and it was like that was when it was like officially too slick. And you're right. We watched Jane, my wife, had never seen the American Pie movies.
Oh, okay.
And we watched, and the soundtrack is all pop punk.
Oh yeah. That's a perfect example. Yeah.
No kidding, right? And it's crazy now because you watch like that movie now would have a DJ in it.
Yeah, it would just be EDM, right? Which is fine. But yeah, it was total like that. That's such a good example, right? Because I mean, Blink-182 even have a scene in that fucking movie, right? Like, but it was such that movie is a monument to that period in time, right? And I remember that period so well because like that was a real coming of age time for me, right? 99, 2000. But yeah, it's like not only were like these bands, like all, and of course in Canada, of course we have Sum 41 and like there was that band LR71 they had that song that was in every single movie trailer, right? Like it was like this big resurgence. But not only that, but then you started having these bands who weren't really pop punk bands per se, but they were in the same milieu and they were marketed the same way. Like Lit, if you remember that band, is a good example. So it was just like it was just everywhere, you know what I mean? Which is like, on the one hand is kind of cool, but on the other hand, like at that age, you're like, oh, well, I just want to be undergrad. And this is clearly not underground anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny. I agree. I still get the same chip on my shoulder, even to the point of like, if three of my friends all like the same band, then I don't want to listen to it. You know, or it's like the thing, it's like you discover a new band and it's like your thing, and then you almost don't want to show other people.
Yes, absolutely. I'm always trying to get a bit better at that. My wife has been very good at sort of whipping me into shape and being like, you gotta get over this. It's like, you're right. You're absolutely right.
I feel like this is not what I'm supposed to ask, but it's where my brain goes next. What are you listening to right now?
Oh man. I don't know. It's something that I love. I mean, maybe this is a cornball thing to say, but something that's so rewarding to me about being a music fan is that, like, of course there's so much to discover, but there's so many little movements, I guess you could say, you know what I mean? Like grade 8, I have this collection of skate punk bands, right? They all kind of sound the same with these little nuances or whatever. And then of course, grade 9, you have these 8, LA bands and then whatever. That hasn't stopped right through my whole life. Like, you discover these new bands, like, when I was like fresh out of high school, or still in high school, I suppose, when I was like 17-ish or something, is when I, started meeting some folks, like the guys who played in Risky Business and stuff, and learning more about like youth crew bands. And that was huge for me, discovering that whole scene of New York hardcore and stuff like that. And then even just a couple of years ago, I started listening to a lot of those sort of weirdo, like, Chicago bands based around Electrical Audio and Steve Albini, which are bands I had heard about for years, like bands like Shellac and the Jesus Lizard and stuff like that. Bands I had heard about like for so long, but never checked out just because, just didn't bother. I just kind of assumed I wouldn't like it or whatever. And I love those bands. So like most of like, I still, I listen to hardcore every day, but in terms of what's really sort of lighting my fire right now would be those Chicago bands like Jesus Lizard, Shellac, I really, really, really am into this band, Silkworm, that really informs a lot of what I'm doing with my current band right now, Souvenir. We're kind of not a Souvenir or not a Silkworm worship band, but definitely like that's the main influence of the band. So if anyone has never heard Silkworm, I would highly, highly encourage them to. It's a fantastic band.
They're a Discord band, is that right?
No, they what label were they on? They were on Touch and Go for a while, and they were also on Matador Records, but they're sort of like this weird, I promise I won't talk about them too much because I definitely could, but like they're this weird anomaly band. They were originally from Montana, which is like, they're the only band from Montana that anybody can name. And then they ended up moving to Seattle, where they found their longtime drummer, and then they ended up moving to Chicago. And Steve Albini is originally from Montana too, so they went to the same high school as him, but didn't become friends till years later. But anyway, they're actually, there's a really great documentary about them called "Couldn't You Wait?" The Story of Silkworm. So people should check that out too. But there's a lot to be said about them. But they're a very strange band. Mm-hmm. Like I don't know, like it's not that their music is inaccessible. Like it's actually quite. When you listen to it, it just kind of sounds like a typical pop band, but then with more listens, you sort of discover more. And I realize that's a corny thing to say too, but it's really true. And they have like this amazing story and sort of were never appreciated in their own time. And then sadly, their drummer was killed in 2005. So they had to move on and do some other bands. But anyway, amazing story. But that's, if my wife can certainly tell you, if you're like, what band does Chris listen to every single day? Silkworm. Probably a little bit too much, But that whole family of Electrical Audio bands is definitely what I'm super into at the moment.
What was the jump like from the basement to like the actual stage, and where were those actual stages? Yes, Summer Rock was good for a number of reasons, but I think the biggest value add that I got from going there was the introduction to playing live. Because, I had a lot of fun little punk projects in the basement with friends that weren't real bands, although in our minds maybe we were. But the first actual show, like for real show that I ever played was in conjunction with that Summer Rock thing, because of course there was like the Summer Rock concert that you play in front of your parents, and I'm not counting that as a show, but there was also this other side show that we used to do at the Pavilion in Halifax. It was like Summer Rock Showcase, and that was the one where it was a little bit more of like a your friends vibe. Like maybe some parents would go, but it was mostly like, it was, I don't know. It was like, it was somewhat of the same thing, but it was like,
you felt like you were playing something a bit more legit because it was at a pavilion, which at that point I'd already been going there for a few years, so it was a big deal to me to be playing there. But we played that show, and then shortly thereafter, because the guys that I was in that summer rock band with were in this real band, Invasion of Privacy, they booked a real show, like an actual punk show. So like the band, quote unquote band that I was in with these guys was called Garbage Disposal Unit.
Oh, I love it.
And we just played covers, right? Because it was a summer rock band, so we played like some Rancid songs and probably some Misfits. We played Dead Kennedys. We played Police Truck. That was the first song I ever sang live.
Nice.
Tried to do a good Jello impression. So yeah, we the same band playing the same cover songs. We played this actual punk show, like an actual show. So like Invasion of Privacy played. Few other local bands, and I met, and like that was awesome too, right? Like that was probably the real first official quote unquote show that I played, so it was super exciting. But also like that show really culminated in my introduction to so many friends and people who were playing in bands at that time, so that was great too. But yeah, that would be the first one, but you can see it's like very connected to that whole summer rock thing. So that really helped do that. But yeah, the Pavilion definitely was like the place for, I don't know, probably until about like 2005, and then started looking at some other. Actually, no, that's not true at all. Probably until about 2009 or so. Yeah. But yeah, that was kind of how it started from there. And then Garbage Disposal Unit played a couple of shows. We played TKO's, which was the skate park in Halifax. That was great, like this indoor skate park. And yeah, anyway, I can give lots of detail about all the different bands and stuff in high school, but I don't want to bore you with all the details. So let me know.
One of the questions I had, but it's like, I don't know if anybody actually knows the answer. Like how many bands would you say you've been in at this point?
Oh man. If I was to count, like, it's funny, right? Talking about like the legitimacy of a band, because of course, like I said, I was in all those punk basement bands, but like I wouldn't really count. They were fun, but I wouldn't count those. But if I was to say like, if the mark of a band would, like the mark of a legitimacy of a band is either playing live or having a recording, I guess I've been in like 20.
Yeah.
But like it's really only like 4 or 5 of those bands that would be like considered like major projects, not to say anything bad about the other ones, but yeah, if that I guess if I was to speak just quite literally on it, I guess 20. Wow. Something in that ballpark. Yeah, but some of these bands were only together for a couple months or something, but yeah,
sure.
Yeah,
but you played or you recorded,
but we either played live or recorded something or both. Yeah. Yeah.
And are you someone who is like, are you able to juggle multiple bands at the same time, or is it more like one then the next thing?
I was, and it was something I used to really enjoy doing. Like when I was in university, I would literally just try to play in as many bands as I could. And then like something that I have a bad habit of doing, and this has followed me up until quite recently, is like biting off more than I can chew, which is maybe something I think you alluded to a bit earlier, right? I think you probably can talk about that too.
ADD, my friend. I have it.
Oh, I wouldn't be surprised. I would not be surprised.
Yeah.
And like these days I'm so here, let me back up. Like, so just like in university, yeah, we try to play a lot, but then like sometimes we'd start a band with people and then all of a sudden we'd get overwhelmed like a few months into it and then be like, oh, I have to stop or whatever. Right. And I've done that a few times throughout the years, and like, and I've gotten better with it. I've gotten worse with it. Like having kids was a major factor. Cause I remember like before Stephanie and I had our first kid, I was like, was playing in 2 bands at the time and quit both of them because I was just like, oh, there's no way I'm going to have any time for bands. And again, this is another example where I should really listen to my wife, because the whole time she was like, you don't have to do this, like you're going to keep playing music. It's like, no, there's no way, blah, blah, blah. And then of course, a few months after Macy was born, it's like, man, I really wish I was in a band. But that was a good catalyst for me being a bit more responsible with it. Cause it used to be like, I would just hope and wish, like I always had at least one band on the go, but while that was happening, I would definitely be hoping that like someone would message me and be like, hey, do you want to start this other band? Because I'd be like, yes, like the answer is going to be yes. Whereas now it's like, and I'm not like blaming my kids or whatever, like it's all good. I'm sure if I had better organizational skills, I could play in multiple bands right now and have it be fine, but that's just not how my brain works.
Yeah.
So now it's like, it's been really cool because recently I've gotten a few offers to do some things musically that they're not starting a band, but they're like I don't know, like I filled it on drums for that band Weekend Dads for a while and recorded a record with them, which was super fun to do. And then I'm going to be playing music in a project with another friend of mine coming up. That's going to be great. But the only band I'm in is my band Souvenir, which is like, that's where pretty much, the vast majority of my creative energy is going. And it's good. Like, it's this thing I get to look forward to every week, and we record and we play shows and whatever. And that's like my main thing. But if I had like 2 or 3 bands of the same commitment on the go, I couldn't do it. Other people can, but I can't,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny. I find like it's something I've got to tone down. Last year, I really did, like, anytime anybody had a project, I would always say yes, and I burnt myself out. And so now it's like the COVID has been kind of a nice break for me because like no one can rehearse, no one can play, so there's no I kind of unintentionally have taken a break, and I can reevaluate a little bit. Because it is the same kind of thing. Like, I'm not going to say no. I like to play. I want to, and it's like flattering to be asked to do something.
Absolutely.
And it's so fun. But there's, it's really easy to like sit back and think, oh yeah, that'd be cool. But then when it becomes an ongoing commitment, and then you've got, now when you're playing multiple bands at the same time, would you say that each one is filling a different kind of like creative need, or does that factor into it?
Yeah, to a degree, like definitely back in the days where I would have been playing in like 3 bands at one time, they all would have sounded different to a degree. They still a lot of might have been in the realm of punk and hardcore or whatever. But if you were to listen to all 3 consecutively, excuse me, you'd see that they're a bit different. But even back in those days, it was always like, I have my main commitment band, and then I kind of have like these side projects, you know what I mean?
Right.
And that's not a slight on anyone, because I think the people who were in those bands with me would also regard them as side projects. But it was just cool because it was a way to collaborate with your friends. And like, still to this day, one of the most exciting things for me is just like new bands. If I go on social media and I can see a friend who's promoting their new band, now they're in a new band with other friends of mine or whatever, like anytime anyone's making some new music is really, really exciting for me. And just like you said, I love being asked. If you're listening to this and you want Ryan and I to play drums for you, we'll do it, right?
Chris will. Don't ask me.
But
just kidding.
But yeah, it's definitely that kind of thing, right? But yeah, it was always in a situation where it's like I have my one real, not real, I have my one main project, and then I have some other stuff. So the main project, if you will, would be the one where it's like, if we're going to tour outside of Atlantic, Canada, or even try to tour in the States, or we're trying to, like, not only are we recording, but we're actually trying to press vinyl or do whatever. That's just one, I wouldn't be able to even back in those days, I don't think I would have had the brain to juggle multiple bands at that level. So I'd have one band that's trying to do that stuff, and then I might have 1 or 2 other bands on the go that are just like, we play local shows, maybe we recorded something to put online, and that's it. You know what I mean? It's the level of commitment is relatively low. It's just purely fun. Yeah,
that's cool. Well, I think that's healthy, and that's a good insight too. Like, in terms of even just like being clear about, even if it's something you don't really necessarily talk about a lot, keeping the main thing, and then other things can be the side things. What was your first like major legit band?
So my first band that ever played a show was this band called The Villains that I had in high school with one of my best friends, this guy Mike Fennell. It was kind of like a Misfits worship band. We only ever played the one show, but I will count it because we played the show, and yeah, it was fun to do. That was a big milestone for me, for sure.
You say Misfits worship. What does that mean?
Oh, so that means that the songs were all about like horror movies, and we would dress in leather jackets and Misfits shirts, and like we I shouldn't say Mike put together an actual CD that we gave out at the show, and like the aesthetic of the band was very much like, we're into zombies and we're into the Misfits and stuff like that. But that was fun to do. And then after that, I was in... 1 second. Oh, yeah, no problem.
As an aside,
yes.
Have you listened to the Danzig Sings Elvis record?
I still haven't. My friend Mark Mullane was telling me about it because he ordered it. And we were sort of... I'm obviously a very big Danzig fan. being in a Misfits worship band and all. And I love all this. I love the band Samhain. I think they're actually maybe one of the best bands of all time, as grandiose a statement as that is. And the band Danzig, those first records I really like too. But Glenn Danzig is, as a person, I think there's a lot of evidence to suggest that he's maybe not the best guy. But I was talking about that. To answer your question, no, I haven't heard it, but I certainly want to. But I was talking with my friend Mark about it, and because he had ordered the vinyl, so he took a picture of it and sent it to me because he knows that I'm kind of a Danzig freak. And I was like, let me ask you a question. Is that vinyl paper thin? And he was like, yeah, it is. It's a super, super flimsy record. And I'm like, I knew it. Because Glenn is notoriously cheap. So I knew that he would, like, even in this day and age of putting out a new record. In this day of
180 gram vinyl, like people putting out one album on 2 records.
Yeah. And he has and back in the Misfits days, like I have so many good things to say about that band, but the records are cheap because they didn't have any money, they're doing the best they can. And he has some money to spend these days, but I just knew if he's doing some kind of a solo venture, it is going to be just on the cheapest, lowest grade, easily breakable vinyl you can imagine. So it was nice to have those suspicions confirmed.
That is so funny. Okay, what is your take on because the original Misfits lineup, he was playing keyboard, right? There was no guitar. That's
right? Yeah. Electric piano. Yeah. Pretty funny.
Yeah. What was that all about?
That was initial incarnation of the band was him on electric piano and Jerry only on bass, and then their first drummer was this guy Manny, who was, I guess, a jazz drummer. So he does all these wild jazz bill fills on that early Misfits single, which is great. But yeah, the first single has no guitar on it. It's the song Cough Cool, and the B-side is the song She. They're both great. I love Manny's drumming on them. And then I'm not sure why the decision was made to become more of a Ramonesian kind of punk band, but it did. And I love those records too. But yeah, it's pretty cool that the origins of the band are this weird kind of art project, and then it became what it became,
Well, no kidding. Yeah, especially for it just seems so what they were doing is already where are they coming from?
Mm-hmm.
To have that layer, because of course I didn't know that, right? You find that out by going back through the history.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting. Okay. So that's the Villains.
Right. So there was the Villains, and then who of course only played one show, but we played a show and we recorded a CD, which is great. And then right after that, I'm in, at this point I've done high school, I'm in university, I'm in this band, Get Tested. We played PEI once.
I remember Get Tested. Maybe that's where I saw it. Where'd you play in PEI?
We played, I think it was a church hall. Maybe that's St. Pius X Hall. Yeah. I think it was there. It was either there or somewhere else. I'd have to, Mike Rankin would know for sure, but I can't. I think it was there. And that band was, the good thing about that band was that it enabled me to get much more experience playing live because we played a lot. And we opened up some bigger shows. And it was a real sort of testament to my friendship with Chris Parsons, who is the singer from that band, is still one of my dearest friends to this day. It was all about rising to the challenge, which is funny because musically, literally sonically, it was not a positive youth crew kind of band. It was a very heavy, sludgy, abrasive, aggressive band, but it had the counterpoint of these super positive lyrics. So I was definitely into that. But yeah, that band was good for a number of reasons. First out of town show I ever played was with that band. Of course, we played in Charlottetown and then played around the HRM a whole bunch. So that band existed for a couple of years.
So in terms of touring, have you done the U.S. tour thing?
Yeah, just only with one band, but yes, I have.
Who was that?
Envision.
Right. How long was Envision together, and were you always in the band?
No, Envision. That was a big deal for me because Envision started in 1997, and of course it's the brainchild of Ian Hart, one of my best friends, and they recorded a demo in 2000, I think, which still to this day that's kind of the main musical output. If people think of that band, that's what they think of as that 2000 demo. But anyway, I saw them in 2000 and I was 13. So probably the first legitimate hardcore band I ever saw was Envision. And of course I really liked them. And then they were opening for Gob. Actually, that's how I saw them.
At that time period, Gob was the only band that ever came to Summerside. They played, they had an indoor skate park there.
Mm.
And they played there. The first time I saw them was with Bigwig.
Amazing.
Yeah, that tour. And then the second time they came through with By a Thread. And other bands would come too. Actually, I shouldn't say they were the only band. Change of Heart played, the Ripcords played.
Oh,
but,
that's cool.
Yeah, but Gob was like the big one.
Gob, I mean, people could say what they will about Gob. I mean, certainly it's after those first couple records, maybe things take a bit of a turn. But I really think they deserve a lot of credit for doing that circuit because, yeah, just, you know, a lot of Atlantic Canada in general, a lot of bands obviously don't care. And Gob really, like, they came a lot. Yep. And they didn't just play Halifax. They went to PEI. They've been to Newfoundland. I'm pretty sure they've been to New Brunswick. Like they played the whole country, and kids came out to see it because it was exciting and you know, it was a big deal. So I do think they deserve some credit there for sure.
Yeah, it was a huge deal for us.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's true. It was like the How Far Shallow Takes You. That tour was the first one I saw them on. Nice. And I agree. Like after, you know, the I Hear You Calling album came out, and you kind of like, oh,
yeah. It's like this band is not quite the same as they were.
Yeah.
But yeah, I saw Envision open for Gob in October of 2000. So I was 13. They were great. And then Gob came back that April. So again, 6 months later, they're back in Halifax already. And this is a band from the other side of the country. So, you know, it goes to show you the kind of touring they did. But the week after that, in April of 2001, Propagandhi, who I'm actually not a very big fan of, played Halifax. Although at the time I liked them. But Envision opened that show. And I bought a demo from Ian. So that was the first time I actually met Ian. So I was 14 when I met him. But anyway, I'm taking too long to tell the story. But
no, it's all interesting to me.
Oh, good. Yeah. But I've been a fan for a while, right? And, you know, I'd seen the band since I was 13. I had the demo at home, listened to it a lot. And then Envision, of course, kind of went on hold, and Ian started Risky Business. Mm-hmm. And then they had been together for a couple of years. And now we're at the point where I've, you know, started hanging out with those guys and getting in with that group of people, and it's all great. And there's some talk about Envision starting up again, I think primarily because there was this guy in town, Jesse Garby, who had moved here from Vancouver, who I ended up becoming very good friends with, still a dear friend to this day. But he, I guess the word on the street was that he played drums. And of course he was straight edge. So it's like, oh, there's actually a straight edge drummer in town. Because I guess that was like the reason why Envision couldn't exist for a few years. Because like there was no, there's no straight edge drummer. Yeah, I think so. Wow. So yeah, as soon as he moves here and people find out like, A, you're straight edge, and B, you play drums, well, boom, you got to play in Envision, right? And of course I'm, you know, I was playing in a band at that time, and it was fun to hang out with my friends. And we made some terrible music, but some okay music. But it wasn't, you know, I was really into youth crew. That's what I wanted to play. I wanted to play fast, snappy music, and that's not really what we were doing. So I was super jealous, right? I was like, man, I wish I was in Envision. And I get to become really tight with Jesse, and then I see him play drums and stuff. And this is no slight against him. He's a great guy. But like, I think what people didn't know is that, yes, he played drums, but he was literally just learning. So I'm not saying, oh, he was bad, like not at all. But he was a novice drummer. Like he had just started learning drums that year, and he had rhythm and could keep a beat. But he's not going to play like that, up, like that hardcore skate. Like it's not going to happen, right?
Development and stamina, yeah.
There's no way. way. So I found that out, and of course, I'm like, great. Like now's my opportunity. So it actually was. I guess it sounds silly to say so many years later, but that was a huge catalyst in me becoming straight edge. I was like, if I'm straight edge, I'm going to have a chance to play in this band that I actually really want to play in. So boom, let's do it. And then, we started practicing, and that became that. Yeah. So that was great. And then eventually we toured. That's the only band I've ever toured the States with. We only did the Eastern Seaboard. So we toured all the way down like through, Massachusetts and New York. Not that we played shows in cool places like that. We played shows in Connecticut and South Carolina and North Carolina, and I guess down around the South a lot, really, like a couple shows in Florida and stuff like that, and then made our way back up. But it was, my God, it was super cool to have the opportunity to play in the United States. It's probably never going to happen again for me. So
kidding.
Super
How
happy
old
about
would
that.
you have been when that happened?
I was in university, and I would have been. That tour happened the summer of 2009, so I had just finished university, so I was 22.
Yeah, that's so exciting at that age.
Oh, yeah, it was great. It was great. Like hanging out in New York City and like meeting all these, and of course Ian, who's significantly older. No slight on him or anything, but he had all these friends in the States. You know what I mean? Like people who had just been involved in hardcore for so long, and people have stories about different people. Like it was just cool to like there's this youth group band up front who I, absolutely love to this day. And like, I got to meet the bass player for that band and become really good friends with him. And then like we stayed at this other dude's house and he had like this demo of the unreleased Gorilla Biscuits third record that never came out. And he let us listen to it and like just shit, like real nerdy shit like that. Right. Yeah. But it was especially for a 22-year-old straight edge dude, it was like, this is amazing.
Well, no kidding. And to be like kind of out in the world discovering this stuff, it's like, you weren't going to have those experiences hanging out at home. So no. Is straight edge something that you have stuck with?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, still straight edge today.
Cool.
Yeah.
Interesting. That was something that like growing up where I did, I don't think it was something that anybody really understood. Like growing up in Summerside, it was all about like trying to get drunk in a field. Like that was
So, I mean, pretty much the same here in Nova Scotia. You know what I mean? Like, right. People have a party like at their barn, and you pass out in the field.
Yeah, that was the goal.
Yeah.
So, where are we at? Envision tours the U.S. You come back. This is 2009.
Yeah, this is 2009. Envision comes back from that tour, and we're playing locally, and things are going great. And then Ian Hart, the singer, he moves to London, Ontario, actually, with his girlfriend, now wife, because she was going to school there. So him moving, of course, sucked because he's such a close friend and like has informed so much of my musical experience. But in a way, it was. I'm not going to say it was good because I really missed my friend, but it was a springboard into doing something that I always wanted to do, but was always too scared to do, which was to try and front a band. Yeah. Because when he moved, it was like everything I was doing musically just kind of stopped. Right? Like he was like my musical partner, you know what I mean? So I was like, oh, now what am I going to do? And then I started talking with Cody Gugu about, maybe we could do something for fun. And like, I wouldn't mind trying to sing. Like Envision used to play this cover of a Judge song that I would sing, and that was fun. So that was kind of me trying to test the waters. And then I was like, well, it sucks that Ian is gone, but the way I can turn lemons into lemonade here is to try out this project. And Cody was all for it, which is great because if he hadn't been, it would not have happened at all. So we went through a few.
Why do you say that?
Well, I think just like I think I would have been a little bit nervous to start the band with. Like there maybe were some other people in town that I could have started a kind of a similar band with, but like
you would have had to find them and like really sell them on it, kind of thing.
Yeah, well, like I think like Word on the Street, which is what all this came out of, like ended up being something that was like certainly a bit more aggressive, I guess, than Envision. But like at the start, it was kind of supposed to be like more of like this posi-core kind of band, right? So I wanted the music to be fast and like harder than Envision, but I still wanted it to be kind of in the vein of a youth group band, I guess. But all that to say, I'm sure I could have found some really rad, like I had friends who would have played in that style of band, but like Cody and I dug so much on some of the same bands that he probably more than anyone else in Halifax at that time understood where I was coming from with the style I wanted. Because of course, like he wrote so much of the music, him and this other guy, Ben Brennan. So he, I just feel like I owe so much to him for many reasons, but in that band, especially, like if he had never been in that band, it would not have started out the way it did. And it wouldn't have ended up the way it did. So he's just, I can only say positive things about him, right? He's just such a great guy. And like, it's funny because the musical relationship I had with Ian ended up being the same with Cody. Like I ended up playing in maybe 4 or 5 different bands with Cody, right? Which was great. You know what I mean? But yeah, we sort of got to work and made this demo and started Word on the Street, and then that became what it became. But yeah, it was definitely sort of like trying to take a negative and turn it into a positive. It's like my friend is gone, but now I get to try my hand at this and see how it goes. And only band I'll ever be the front person for, that's for sure. Yeah, so that felt really good.
Why do you say that?
I don't know. I think I guess that could change, but like I feel like whatever bands I'm lucky enough to be a part of, like for the rest of my life, is probably just going to be behind the kit. Now this I don't want to jump around chronologically too much, but like this band I'm in right now, part of the reason why it's been so rewarding is that it's the first serious band I've been in where I'm actually writing some of the music. Like we did in February, we released a 6-song EP, and there's 3 people in the band, so each of us wrote 2 songs, and like I've written lyrics obviously for Word on the Street, which was immensely rewarding. Like, this is no slight on Word on the Street. Like, I'm so thankful for that band for so many reasons that I can get into if you like. But
Lay 'em on us.
Souvenir, but Souvenir is a different thing, because it's like, not only am I writing lyrics, but like literally I'm writing music. Like, I wrote the music for 2 songs, and like never took myself seriously enough as a guitar player to actually like try and write something that would be good enough to record with a band. But because of the encouragement of my friends Lockie and Dave, who I'm in the band with, I worked up the courage to do that, and they're both incredible musicians, right? So I was really, really scared. Like, my personal opinion of them, especially as musicians, is extremely high. So, here I am, like, super novice guitar player, like trying to bust out these songs and trying to do anything that's not a power chord just to throw it in there. And then, of course, I show it to them, and they're the two nicest guys you'll ever want to meet. So, of course, they're like, yeah, that's great. That's, no problem. Good work. And then, I don't know, they really helped me get over a lot of that fear. So, yeah, 2 of those songs on the EP are mine. I wrote the music and I wrote the words, but Lockie was good enough to sing them because I was too nervous. Because Word on the Street is like vocals, but you're not singing. You know what I mean?
Right.
But with Souvenir, I might actually try and do some real singing in the future. But we'll see how that goes. Yeah.
Will you do it live or?
No, it's funny. That's something I really wanted to talk to you about too. Is like the phenomenon of the singing drummer, right? Like, I have plans maybe to sing a song like on whatever our next recording is, but like, I don't know if we'll ever play the song live, because it feels, I don't know, there's nothing wrong with singing behind a drum kit. Like, I've seen people do it really well, but I just don't feel like I can. Like, I've tried it with this band a couple times just to see if I could do it, and mentally it just kind of threw me off. Like, I couldn't concentrate on my drumming. I guess I can only concentrate on literally one thing at a time.
Well,
but, yeah.
I agree. I think because it's like you've got so much going on physically. Because even if you're playing guitar or something, it's like one hand is just going up and down, the other one is just holding a chord, and like yeah, those chords can change, but it's not like you're doing a bunch of different motions. Where with the drums, it's like hand, foot, other hand, they're all doing kind of their own thing, and sure, it's repetitive in a different way. But the other thing that I find too is like, just the like having a mic over here,
yes,
kind of play, and you gotta like crane your neck,
yeah.
And I don't know about you, I grunt into the microphone.
Yeah, me too. Me too. No, but you're so right. Like in my head, I was like, okay, I can do this. Yeah, maybe I will sing a song live. And then we tried it in practice, and yeah, I'm like tilting my head to the microphone, and like, I could only imagine how hard it is to sing a song and play guitar at the same time. And playing drums is just like, it's so physical that it made it so much more difficult to sing. And like, I just bombed it. You know what I mean? And I was just like, this is just not going to work for me. And like, I guess if anything, it just has given me so much more respect for people who I have seen sing into a microphone and drum at the same time. Because in my mind, I'm just like, how are you doing that? Like, you were just from another planet.
Well, I think in the same way that like you learn to play the drums, like doing separate things, like you could do it. But I think in my experience anyway, trying to like practice singing, I approach it like drums in that it's like I have to practice the physical movements of my mouth. It's not about like words and melodies. It's like that. But yeah, I also think that like, I don't know, visually it's a little like, how many bands can you think of where the drummer is the lead singer?
Oh my God.
There are a few, and I mean,
there are a few.
You like Phil Collins or like, Anderson .Paak now, but even he like moves back and forth.
I can't think of many others. I mean, there's Death from Above, 1979, and there's Snuff.
Really?
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I think it's the drummer that sings in that band.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I think I could be wrong about that. But like further to your point, off the top of my head, those are the only 2 I can think of. You know what I mean? Like, it's not a common thing, and there's a reason for that, right? It's fucking hard to do. But
yeah. Yeah, exactly. And it's like visually is weird too. Like, I think of like the image I get in my mind is from John Vision of there being a band where do you remember
oh my God,
like the
yes.
Battle of the Bands?
Oh yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and there was like a punk band where the lead singer was a drummer, and it just looks weird because you got the 2 guys out front who are like, They're like playing their guitars or whatever. They're not doing anything. You're so used to one of those people being like the person who's in your face. And
exactly.
You just can't be in people's faces as a drummer because you're back there.
Exactly. Like it feels like, and like no offense to bands who do it, because I think there are bands who do it. You know, I'm sure if I sat and thought about it, I could think of at least a couple of bands that I quite like that have a singing drummer. But it's like for the live element, you want to be engaging. And I feel like especially like, part of the reason hardcore is so exciting is because almost always there's a front person who's in your face. But even for like
into the crowd.
Exactly, yeah, like who's like doing the real big crowd engagement, and then now playing in more of like more of a casual rock band where like everyone's playing an instrument, you're not going to have that same level of engagement. But at least if someone is out front singing, it gives the crowd something to sort of focus on or whatever. But yeah, I definitely have been to, and once again, not making fun of anybody, but I've definitely been to shows where the drummer is singing, and it's such a bizarre and unsatisfying experience because you're all standing around watching these guitar players who are like not engaging with you whatsoever, and you hear a voice, but you don't see anything. And it's kind of like, I don't know how I feel about this.
Yeah,
you know?
No kidding.
Yeah.
That's funny too. That's interesting that like you hear a voice and you don't see, because then you're right. Like you got to go looking for like, where's that sound coming from?
Mm-hmm.
And then it is the whole thing of like the lead singer prowling around the stage.
Yeah. Those crowd dynamics are important, you know, but to those who can do it well, hats off to you. Cause I don't know how you're doing it.
Sure.
So good on you.
Were you in Risky Business?
No, I wish, but Risky Business was like such a big deal for me, not only because I like the music, but like, that was another time in my life where sort of like I still had a group of friends at home. But I was at this boarding school that was about 45 minutes out of town, so I didn't see my friends that much. And when I would come home on the weekends, I would want to go to shows, you know, as a music fan. And the friends I have in Dartmouth are still dear friends to this day, but they were not really interested in going to shows, right? So when I went to shows, a lot of times I would just go by myself. I didn't really have people to talk to. And for the first few years of going to shows, like you meet people here and there and you kind of develop a friendship, but and I'm not, and I'm super grateful for that. But part of the reason why Risky Business means so much to me, as silly as that sounds, is that specifically thanks to my friend Chris Parsons and thanks to Ian Hart, that group of people who were in that band and the friends who were sort of in that circle of that band, it wasn't just like, oh, I would go to the show and I would say hi to them and go home. Like I would hang out with them. They actually became like real legitimate friends and still are today. So it was kind of like, it was a bit of a trip for me because I always sort of had those two pieces of my life separated. I had my friends and then I had sort of acquaintances I knew through the music scene, you know? So it felt a little bit lonely. And they really, it was so kind. Like they were so welcoming to be like, the show is over. And it's like, well, don't go home because you can come hang out with us and we're doing this. And of course, like I'm a young guy, I'm like 17 and into punk and hardcore, but like I only know so much because I'm a kid. And they, of course, Ian especially, have you heard this band? Have you heard this band? You should listen to this record. So I'm just like so hungry for it and eating up all this new music and learning about it and also, creating these friendships. So it was like a pretty big deal. So I think I only really played in two bands with Ian, which were Envision and Word on the Street. But I guess it feels like I've played in a lot of bands with them, if that makes sense. Yeah.
So you were away at school, not hanging out with your friends, and you come home on the weekends, and then you would go to shows by yourself rather than hang out with your friends.
It was sort of like the weekend was like, obviously the weekend is such an important time for everybody, and especially when you're in high school. But like I had to live at this school from Monday to Friday, wear a uniform and sleep in the dorms and all that stuff. And then I would come home and basically you have like 48 hours to like have a good time, before you get shipped back to school. So it would always, if there was a show, then it kind of would be, let's say the show's on Saturday night. Well, Friday night, I'm going to actually hang out with my friends. My friends I've had since I was a kid. We'll hang out at someone's house, do whatever. And then Saturday night, I'm going to go to the show where I'm with this whole other separate group of people. So it is kind of, you feel like you live a double life or even a triple life, right? Because it's like I have my friends, I have music, and then I have school. Like three totally different arenas where the groups of people don't know each other at all. So it was a little bit weird, but eventually it all came together.
Yeah. But that's like, it's real dedication. And I would say like, I guess on some intuitive level, I understand it because I would share some of that. But what do you think? What am I trying to say here?
I think I hear you, right? Because it's like
what made it so important?
Just to like this is a time in my life where like I had played like those those first couple bumbling shows that I was telling you about, you know what I mean? Like the first couple punk shows and whatever. And just like, and that felt great, but it's just like, all I want to do is be in a band and play shows, you know what I mean? And like, of course, when I was going to boarding school for 2 years, there's no way that was going to happen. And it's just like, and just having a love of the music scene and just wanting to go to as many shows as possible, especially back then, it was, you know, I hear what you're saying. It was weird, right? Because in a way, and sometimes in some sense, it would like circumvent hanging out with my friends, which is, you know, I wasn't trying to put them off. Like we hung out a lot when I was home on the weekends, but like if there was a show, that was my priority, you know what I mean? And I would book anything around that. Like even if it was like some show in a basement where I really only wanted to see one of the 3 bands playing, it was just like, there's a show, I'm going, you know what I mean? Like I am going to be there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, because the other side of it is too, like, have you ever done the thing where it's like, oh, I'm really excited about this show, but none of my friends want to go, so I wind up not going and just hanging out with them and then regretting it all night?
I'm trying.
I have done that. That's why
You've done that. I may have done that once or twice, but for me, it was always the opposite thing. It was like I would always prioritize the show, and I wouldn't necessarily regret it, but sometimes I felt bad. You know, it's like for having friends is really important, especially at that age. And it was just like, oh, I feel bad that I didn't like go to this party or this sleepover or whatever. But like, I don't know. I guess this sounds selfish, but I never really cared that much. Like if the show was good, fuck everything else. You know what I mean? Yeah. It was like, that's where I wanted to be. Saw the show. Great. Done. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. But I hear you.
I know, like, it's a... so some friends of mine, I moved my mic stand because I keep fiddling with it. Some friends of mine we had seen Bucket Truck at Somersault.
Okay.
In the late 90s, we're like, well, they're so heavy. We got the CD, and it was like their first one, and the album was not so heavy. But we had emailed them. My friend emailed them and was like, you guys got to come to Summerside. It'll be a huge show. Lots of kids will come out. And they're like, really? And they're like, oh, yeah. So anyway, they booked a show, and I remember the night of it. I was like really excited, and all of my friends were like, "Oh, you guys gonna go to that?" No, I don't think so. I just remember like feeling guilty that we had convinced these guys to come over to PEI, and then like we weren't even gonna go.
Yeah.
Oh God, I hope they're not listening.
Can I tell you? I promise I won't spend too much time on this, but it's so funny that you should mention Bucket Truck because like I was at that Somersault show. They're one of the first bands I saw live. I'm not gonna, and it's that CD. I had the exact same experience as you. Like I saw them, and this is when I'm like hard into the new metal phase, right? And it's like, oh, they're super heavy. That's great. And then I bought the CD, and I listened to it for years. Like I liked it, but it was like it definitely was a disappointment because sonically it's not heavy whatsoever, right? You think they're kind of a metal band, and then you buy that CD, and it's like it's way something else. So I can relate.
Even the recording, like, there's no reverb on it or something. The guitar
there's like no bass
really
on
dry.
It. It's very, very trebly and like it's a strange recording. Didn't stop me from listening to it like way more than I should have. But yeah, definitely. And at some point in there, I started playing drums with Outtacontroller, which was a really, really fun experience too.
Yes, I used to live with James for.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, right on. Cool.
Yeah, they're a good band.
Yeah. It was that was a real Henry Rollins moment for me because I was a big fan. Like it's funny because I had seen them a couple of times and I liked them, and I always liked them, but it was what would it have been? It was the summer. I think it was the summer of 2012 that I had just bought their first LP, Don't Play Dumb, and I had been aware of them for a while and liked them, but it wasn't until I bought that record and started listening to it a lot that I really just fell in love. Like I was this huge fan. I listened to the record several times a day, every day. And right in the middle of that happening, I get a text from my friend, Maddie Grace, because she was becoming the new bass player in the band. And she was just like, hey, I'm in this band now. They're looking for a drummer, like, you know, because just part-time because their first drummer had to move away. So would you be into doing this just for a little bit? And like, yeah, under normal circumstances, I'm sure my answer would have just been like, yeah, that sounds cool. But because I was so entranced by this band, my immediate answer was like, yes. And can you find out if they want someone permanent? I want to be in this band permanently. Like they're so good. And so, yeah. So then I ended up being in that band for 3 years, I think. Yeah. 3 years. Yeah.
And why only 3 years?
Just because in the fall of 2015 is when my first son was born.
Yeah.
And I'm sure I could have stuck with the band, but I just personally was scared that like, even if we had just kept doing what we were doing, that I would have held the band back. Like we had just recorded a full length LP, which I'm super proud of that record, and some other stuff. But like,
what's
the
that
band,
called?
it's called Television Zombie. And, we would play Moncton a lot, which was super fun. But like, I just didn't want to be in a position where I was preventing them from doing anything, because obviously like my priority has to be my kid, and they totally understood that. But it was interesting too, because to be honest, I would have quit the band anyway, even if it was a band that just played locally every couple of months, because I had gotten in my own head about it.
Mm-hmm.
But Stephanie and I having our first kid was happening at the exact same time where Outtacontroller was starting to do more. So we would play Moncton. Now we had started to play Moncton more, which is almost a 3-hour drive there and another one back. And also that's when they were tossing around more of the idea of like going out west to do shows, which they did. Like shortly after I left, they went to Alberta. They've been to BC. They've been doing a lot, and getting the band to a more serious level, which I'm super happy about, because I'm still just such a huge fan. But I definitely did not want to be the weak link in that chain, because I just love the band so much. So had to bow out. Right around that same time, right before I left Outtacontroller, I had just started playing in Botfly when it was a brand new project. So playing with Keegan and Sean, and then quit at that band at the same time for the same reasons. And then of course they got the powerhouse that is xEnvisionx, and now they're super successful, and I love that band very much as well.
I didn't know you were in that band.
Yeah, the very first Botfly demo, the Parasitic Oscillation demo, I played drums on that.
Cool.
Yeah, so that was a super fun experience too, to play with those guys, to explore some different musical ideas. Because that band certainly doesn't sound like anything else I had played before. And I had always been hungry to play something a bit more technically challenging.
Uh-huh.
And I saw that as an opportunity to do it. Keegan certainly was into like tempo changes and sort of a bit more out there time signatures. He's a big Jesus Lizard fan, and he's into bands like that too. So that was super exciting, just to be able to play some music that was a much different style than I had played before. But yeah, I quit Botfly and Outtacontroller at the same time, thinking that I was done with music, foolishly thinking I was done. and then about a year and a half ago, the idea for Souvenir popped up, and then that's what I've been doing ever since.
How has having kids changed your relationship to everything you're doing? Because it is something like, I don't have any kids right now, but it's like not in the picture,
Sure. Oh yeah.
So it's something that I definitely am like nervous about, because like, am I gonna have to quit everything?
I think it's like, not to give a cheap answer, but I think it's like a lot of it definitely has to do with the person. And like I said, if I was someone who had better time management and organizational skills, then maybe I could play in a couple of bands who were at the same productivity level of a band like Botfly or Outtacontroller while having 2 kids. But me personally, I just know that I can't do that. Like I'm someone who, I can get stressed out easily about things that aren't, as big a deal as I make them to be out in my head and things like that. So, for me personally, Souvenir is good because it's just the one thing that I get to focus on. And the Lockie is also a father of 2. So we sort of understand each other's schedule. We don't play live that much, you know what I mean? But it's a laid back approach to being in a band. So being a parent while being in a band like that is not that much of a challenge, like schedule wise, it's pretty easy. So I'm super thankful for that.
Lockie.
But I certainly know people.
What's Lockie's last name?
Go ahead. Lockie McDonald.
Right,
so he was in the band Horse.
Yeah.
So he's been in a bunch of great bands. He was in Horses and Discontrol and lots of great bands. Beat Material. We've known each other for a long time, but we only became really good friends like maybe just a few years ago. And he's someone who I've musically, I've just always admired so much. Like I just think his music is great. So to finally have the opportunity to make music with him, and again, to showcase something I've written to him and have him be like, it's a good song, we should play that. And I'm like, is a victory for me for sure. Like I'm like, Lucky likes my song. That's great.
No kidding.
So feels good.
Well, especially as a drummer, it's like you can be it's like you're so important to the overall like vibe and energy of the band, but at the same time, in terms of like contributing musically, it's like easy for the drummer to be the person who contributes the least in terms of like musical direction or songwriting or whatever.
And yeah, and by that token, it's like I guess I'm kind of doing things in the reverse, right? Because for years and years, I played drums in a lot of bands where it's like, I think I contributed something to the band by drumming, and I think I was able to, hopefully to help the value of the music, but I didn't contribute to the artistic vision. You know what I mean? Whereas, so usually people I feel like will do that before they have kids, and then when they have kids, I'll take more of a back seat. I kind of did things the opposite. This is the first band where like a big part of the artistic vision is coming from me, but I'm doing it after having two children. But it's okay because we play when we feel like it, and we take it casually and whatever. And the same experience I have with Lockie is the same with the other guy in the band, Dave, who I haven't known for nearly as long, but I'm still a huge fan of his music and his playing, and respect his musical opinion. So it feels nice as the dumb drummer to showcase something for two people like that and have them both be like, hey, that's good, man. You should write more. Like, all right, I will.
That's
Great.
amazing.
Yeah.
And what kind of music are you guys making?
It's definitely, it's the first band I've been in years that really, I guess you couldn't really classify it as a punk band, and certainly not a hardcore band. Very much influenced by that band Silkworm. It's kind of, I suppose you call it sort of like a 90s alt rockish kind of band. So there's some Jawbreaker influence. There's some Dinosaur Jr. influence. But yeah, it's definitely a different vein than anything I've done before. But it's like, it's funny, man, because as a drummer, you can probably appreciate this. Like for years as a drummer, especially as a punk drummer, you would hear about people talking about like, oh, I play in this band, and it's nice to start playing this slow music because I can really explore the space. And it's like, that's such bullshit. You know what I mean? Like what a corny thing to say, you know what I mean? So I don't want to say that Souvenir is fun because I get to explore the space, but I mean, that is the truth, like we don't play super slow or anything, but certainly we don't play at the speed that I'm used to playing in bands. But it's nice because I get to be more technical on the drums. I get to try out more experimental stuff and do some fills that I normally wouldn't get to do, you know what I mean? And if the band wasn't the style it was, I wouldn't be able to do that. So it definitely has lent itself to my playing. So it's, I'm super proud of the band. I think it's some of the best drumming that I've done. And really exploring the space.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel that you've mellowed out now? Are you like a chilled out dad now?
Hopefully not. I still, if I was able to juggle more than one band at one time, I definitely would still be down to do like a super fast hardcore band or even a power violence band. Like I fantasize about starting projects like that. Yeah. If I ever have the time again, I definitely would love to do something like that. And of course, if Dexter ever takes a trip back to Halifax and Word on the Street is able to play again, that's always fun to do. Like, even though I'm not behind the drum kit, it's still like, it's super fast music. It's very physical. It's very aggressive, and it lets me exercise a lot of demons. So mellower, but not too mellow, hopefully.
I was going to say, like, that's the fear. I don't know if it's anything you need to be afraid of, but it's like, you get older and then you're like not into the heavy shit anymore or whatever. Mm-hmm. Cool. I didn't realize Dexter was in that band.
Oh yeah. Oh, so, I mean, everyone in that band is so great, but it was also such a good experience to play in a band with him because, as two drummers and people who are good friends and who like each other's drumming, it's like, man, it'd be great to have a musical project together, but how are we going to do that? We're both drummers. So it was, and I'm such a fan of his drumming. It was such a good opportunity. And I'm hoping that's the same kind of thing that will happen with me and other people in the future. Cause I can think offhand already, like Ben Radford, who has played drums in, he got an Unreal Thought, and I'm trying to think here, and he's played in Zygome, he's played in Abject Pax, he's played in like the best, like creme de la creme Halifax punk bands, and is a phenomenal drummer and is a really, really dear friend of mine. And it was the same kind of thing. I'm such a big fan of his drumming, and it was like, man, it would be so great to play in a band with him, but how are we going to do it? And then we ended up being in this band Mean Streets together where he sang and I played drums. So that was great. So I'm hoping that all the drummers that I'm a huge fan of, like Glenn Barrington and Dave Brown and I'm trying to think, and Meg Yoshida, like all these people who I think are amazing and would love to collaborate musically. Hopefully we figure something out, because there's two drummers. It's like, well, what the fuck are we going to do?
How do you do it, right? The thing that kept me neat about that, though, is I played it. The first band I ever played a guitar in a couple years ago was a Bad Religion cover band. So Maddie Grace was in that.
Okay, yeah.
Dylan Mombercat was on the drums, and Sean McGilvery was the other guitar player. So You got both guitar players are drummers, and you have a drummer. So it's like the band, it's like is automatically pretty tight out of the gate because we're all like, you know, we're all thinking about the same thing. It's like, yeah, it's a guitar, but really what I'm thinking about is rhythm.
That was one of the best parts about being an Outtacontroller, and an experience that I've never had with any other band, because both James and Terry are both drummers. So it's like their sense of timing and their ideas for what they might want me to do, like it was just like they were on point. You know what I mean? Like there was never any time where, you know, as a drummer, sometimes your musical sensibility is different than someone who's just used to playing guitar. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it was so nice to play with a couple people who were like, just knew it. You know what I mean? Like they didn't have, there was nothing that they had to explain more than at a very base level, because they had an understanding of what playing drums is, you know, like their rhythmic understanding was very on point. So that was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Cause sometimes it's not there at all. Like,
exactly. Yeah. It could be a train wreck. Like it's been a long time since I've been in that situation, but yeah, definitely have been in band practices where like you're trying to explain a part of a song to someone, or they're trying to explain something to you, and you are just not on the same wavelength at all. Yeah.
All right. You've got a new, I don't know, would you call it a new project? The Pentagon Black thing that came out? Can you tell us about that a little bit?
So in 2016 or maybe 2017 is when I got my first iPhone. So I was really late to the party. And the reason why I waited so long is because I wanted to wait for my work to pay for it. So that's why I did that. And then as silly as this...
Dude, I have an iPhone 5S right now, and it's like dying. But it's like, I'm saying, I didn't want to... whatever one I could get for free, which is like the oldest currently available one.
Yeah. You and I are definitely on the same wavelength with that. So I was like, I'm not going to go buy one. Like eventually I'll get one. And then I did. And this is going to sound super silly, but like obviously, you know, before I had a phone like that, I did not have Instagram, but I had an idea of what it was. And one of the first things I wanted to do on Instagram, I had an idea where it was like in the month of February, every day I'll post a Black musician, you know, and if I can, a Black punk musician that I look up to or I'm influenced by, or I just think they're cool or whatever, just to spread the word, because I feel like a lot of people don't know about them. So I did that 2 years in a row. And that was a lot of fun. And that's all it was supposed to be, was just some pictures on Instagram. And then my friend, Dave Ewenson, he did some recording work in Halifax. He used to be in the band, The Sweet Tenders. He saw it, and he was working with the Obey convention, or now it's called Every Seeker, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
He was working with them, and he was like, hey, I think it would be really cool if you were to speak at the Every Seeker symposium and just talk about these musicians. Like, can you turn this into a talking some sort of a talking performance, which is not something I had thought of. Like, it really was just supposed to be like, here's some cool photos.
Well, I remember, and I think I was living, what year? You said it was 2016?
This would have been the first time I actually did the talking show was spring of 2017.
Oh, okay.
It's not, you know, my ambition was not to have it be a speaking performance. It was just supposed to be this little Instagram thing. But I got asked to do it, and I was like, yeah, that sounds cool. You know, sure, I'd like to try my hand at that. And like all I did was I just turned it into a PowerPoint presentation and spoke over it. But people seemed to dig it, which was great. And then I was able to take that. I did a couple of shows in the HRM, and then I did one as part of Out of Earshot in St. John's, Newfoundland, which was hugely fun. And then got to do it in Montreal, and also got to be part of a panel of Black musicians in Montreal. So like this little presentation has enabled me to do a lot of really cool things that I would not have thought, which is great. But yeah, this is another one of those things. Like, I was contacted by Raymond, and it's funny too, because he's someone who I only got to know somewhat recently, but he was just like, hey, you know, he gave me the rundown on Pentagon Black, and he told me like, you know, he was like, the vision is yours, but maybe in some way we can incorporate that Black Dots presentation into this pamphlet, right? So I got back to him, and I was like, you know, sounds like an amazing opportunity for sure. Maybe I can just condense it into like, I can just highlight like maybe, you know, 4 or 5 people who would be fun to highlight. And then I guess the new thing with one of the main differences between the presentation and the pamphlet is that the presentation, depending on who I'm speaking to or where I'm giving it, sometimes I touch on some personal elements from my life. Sometimes I don't, because really the point is just, I want to talk about these musicians and I want people to listen to their music. This pamphlet was way more personal, because maybe a third of the pamphlet is me just talking about my life and getting into punk rock and dealing with racism and stuff like that. So it was cool to be able to offer something a little bit different than the presentation. But yeah, it was totally like, Ray deserves all the credit, really. It was his brainchild. He reached out to me and was just like, yep, we will absorb the cost, we'll print it, we'll do whatever. And then the really rad thing was like, we'll just print it and distribute it to whoever wants it, but we'll send you like however many copies you want to distribute locally, and it's up to you with how you want to do that. So I said, no problem. Why don't you send me like 25? Because I literally thought there's not going to be more than 25 people who will want one. And at first I was just going to give them out to friends or whoever might want one. And then I got back to him and I was like, hey, I think it'd be cool to like, considering all that's happening in the world right now, maybe I'll give these out for whatever suggested donation and try to raise some money for Black Lives Matter NS. And I really was not expecting him to do this, but he was like, yeah, that sounds great. We'll do the exact same thing with our sales until the end of the month, which was really rad. And even at that time, I was not expecting to sell that much, but we've sold over 1,300 copies of the thing now. So we're going to be able to give that charity over $2,000, which, is a big deal. So I'm super happy about that.
That's amazing. Yeah, it really is amazing. And I think it's like, not to sound too like capitalistic or whatever, but I think it is a thing where, like I ordered one. It hasn't shown up yet, but it's like, oh, of course, it's $2. Like, how can you not? but seriously, it's like $2, something people get to feel good about. Plus, it's a cool thing. It's like as a piece of history. Like, you're right. I think it's history people don't know. I think. Would you say now that the fact that it's like a written thing and not something you need to get up in front of a crowd to talk about allows it to be more personal, or is it?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, totally. And like, not that I'm like, not that I think there's anything wrong with people kind of bearing their soul on stage. Like I'm all for it, and I have no problem doing it myself, really. But like, I think just because I get in my own head too much, sometimes I worry about like, how personal should I make this? Am I like, I don't want to be Mr. Spotlight guy, when I'm up there. So, for example, the presentation I gave, like the first one in Halifax, was very much like, here are these people, here are these musicians, I think you should check them out. And then as I gave the presentation a few more times, I didn't want to just give the same thing every time. So like, for example, the one I gave in Newfoundland was certainly more personal. Like I incorporated more stories that I had just from my life. But anyway, all of this is a roundabout way of saying, yes, absolutely. I think that the fact that it's like something printed and it's not me speaking, I definitely felt more comfortable to talk about maybe like some ugly things from my past, or maybe some sensitive issues or stuff like that. So yeah, it was a good catalyst for that, I think.
Yeah. Wow. Cool. Cool. Sorry, that's totally not.
If you think it's cool, then that means a lot. So thank you. That's great.
I do. I totally think it's cool. Well, how do you feel about this? Is like kind of switching gears, but I was looking up because I was doing a little bit of research, and I saw in a thing that you had mentioned X-ray specs. So I looked up a video of them, and I very quickly on the YouTube comments, it devolved into sorry, these guys are not punk.
Oh my God, it's incredible.
How do you feel about that?
I feel like that is completely comical. That's so funny. I mean, first of all, that argument is so hysterical anyway. But I mean, for that band specifically, I mean, how are you going to say that they're not a punk? I mean, a band that was involved in the first wave of punk bands, like a band that cannot be separated from, I don't know, that musical movement, but also like everything about that band is punk. Like a band with a female person of color as a lead singer who's exploring her own issues, like a band that scared people, a band that had musical elements in it that separated them from other punk bands. Like they had that saxophone player and stuff in the band. Like they could not be more punk,
Saxophone is not punk.
Yeah, apparently not, right? Oh my God. Yeah, everything in this little box is punk, and then everything else is not. That's amazing. I love that argument. Oh man, too funny. Too funny.
That's beautiful.
Well, yeah. I think I have to go pick up my kids, but I don't want to take up any more of your time. But I'm super thankful for the opportunity to be on the podcast. Thank you.
I'm super thankful to you for doing it.
My pleasure. My absolute pleasure. It was so much fun.
I mean, I can't say it any better than that. All right, huge thanks to Chris Murdoch for being here. You can check him out. You can check out Souvenir at souvenirhfx.bandcamp.com. He's on Instagram at sweetbellyfreakdown. I'm going to have links to all of his stuff in the show notes at learndrums.ca. I keep forgetting to ask people where people can find their stuff online, but it'll all be there. Thanks for listening. See you next week.